I'm here with Paola Di Ferdinandi, who is the Trade Commissioner for Australia and New Zealand with the Italian Trade Agency. Hi, Paola.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you finally.
You
in
too.
Person.
Yeah, great to be in person
Yes.
after so long. So, Paola, tell us about the Trade Agency, the Italian Trade
Yes,
Agency, and
sure.
your role, please.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I'm the responsible of the Italian Trade Agency office in Sydney, and I'm the Trade Commissioner for Australia and New Zealand. The Italian Trade Agency is the governmental agency that through its headquarters in Rome, they are based in Rome, and a network of about 80 offices, promotes made in Italy throughout the world and trade relations with other countries. In doing so, we support the growth of small and medium Italian companies in the world, and we also contribute to the attraction of foreign investments to Italy. It's important to say that we implement the strategies of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, and so we work closely with the embassies around the world and also with all the stakeholders in Italy appointed for the internationalization of the Italian companies. So
Wonderful.
it's a big organization, with branches in more or less all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And what's the relationship like, Paola, between Australia and Italy in relation to trade and investment and so forth?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Australia is a very important economic partner for Italy. It represents the fifth destination in this area of the world, and so in the Asia-Pacific region, after, of course, big markets like China, Japan, South Korea, and Hong Kong. I can give you a figure of the value of the imports from Italy to Australia in 2021, which amounted to approximately 4.8 billion euros. What's important is that this figure equals to a plus 17% compared to the previous years.
Right.
So the sectors with the greatest weight in terms of value are, and this is also important to underline because Italy is always known for fashion and food, but actually the first, the top ranking we see machinery and components, and followed by vehicle and pharmaceuticals. So, and within the vehicles, motorcycle and bicycles, which probably you wouldn't think
That's right.
right away.
Yeah.
As far as for fashion, the top of the ranking we have leather products, and for food and beverage, wine. Even though Australia is a very strong local market for wine, but we export. Actually, within Europe, we became the first country per value.
Yeah.
And France used to be the first, in the past.
Wow.
So we are sort of
really notching up.
gaining market share in Australia.
Wonderful. And you mentioned those industry sectors, Paola. I wanted to ask you about the diverse spread of the presence of Italian companies across Australia. And I know when we spoke earlier, the number of companies who have got that presence here in Australia is quite impressive.
We see a growing interest from Italian companies towards this market, and we were able to map about 250 Italian companies here, but probably there are much more. Australia is such a big country; it's a little bit hard to follow all of them. But what I can say is that these 250 companies are rooted in Australia, meaning that they opened like a representative office, or in some case they manufacture their products here, and for all kinds of sectors, 360 degrees, not only fashion, not only food, but a lot of technologies, a lot of even new technologies. So this is very promising, and I think there is so much more to do, especially in innovative technology here in Australia. So my effort here during these 4 years of my appointment, that unfortunately is towards its end, my efforts were really focused on sort of not changing, but enriching the image of my country in Australia, because my country is a country of technologies, of tradition in manufacturing, and this is really what would like to underline. Not only fashion is fantastic, food is fantastic, but we all know that. But technology and manufacturing, 360 degrees.
Well, I want to touch on that, and it's a really important point that you make about enriching Australia's awareness of those other industry sectors. I mean, today we're at Fine Food here in Melbourne at the Exhibition Centre, and I want to explore those other sectors with you. But what's the purpose here, and what's the support like for Italian companies to be at Fine Food here in Australia?
At Fine Food, we every year, apart from the last 2 years that the show was cancelled, we organize important participation of Italian companies to Fine Food, and not only food but also wine. This year we have 17 companies, and with a wide range of products, from traditional products that you may think like pasta, sauces, but also different kind of products like bakery products, for confectionery, and wine. We always have also companies from the wine sector participating to our Italian pavilion. And you will see that the Italian pavilion this year in Australia is the only pavilion from Europe with this importance. And so we are very proud of it, very, very proud. And this is the support that we give also to companies that were never in this market and they are trying to enter the market.
Well, I know that here in Melbourne, everyone loves Italian food. The relationship between Italian business and Melbourne business is always strong. You touched on some of those sectors, Paola, but things like aerospace, defense, manufacturing technology, advanced tech. I know a lot of companies who get their machinery manufactured overseas in Italy. So tell us a bit about some of those emerging sectors.
First of all, manufacturing is a very sensitive issue, because after the crisis, after COVID-19, that unfortunately was a work crisis, and that hit also Australia after 30 years of growth with no interruption. So this crisis really underlined everywhere the need to be a little bit more self-sufficient and to develop a local industry for manufacturing that would also support the growing of employment. So this new awareness is also here in Australia, because in the past Australia followed this model of development that actually was very successful, that was based to export primary products from your richness, like agriculture and minerals, and so you follow this model, and you would import every product, all the products that would be more expensive to manufacture locally. But now there is a new awareness. You want to develop your own manufacturing industry that you have in some sectors, like the wine industry, for example. And so I think that to that extent, Italy could be a very useful and strong partner for Australia, because Italy doesn't have all the natural resources that you have, but we have a very strong tradition in manufacturing, 360 degrees. So including in these sectors that you mentioned, there are sort of emerging sectors in Australia, like the space sector. Italy has a very long tradition in the space sector. We organize actually twice a year, a participation to the forum that is held in Adelaide for the space sector, and also green energy. Energy and green energy in general, green energy and energy in general, they open up new frontiers for a new cooperation, between Italy and Australia that we are trying to support.
Wonderful.
Through our office and our consulates and embassies here in the country.
And I think those are, as you say, really growth areas, growth sectors. And that opportunity to really build those connections is really powerful. I wanted to ask you, Paola, about the upcoming FTA, the Free Trade Agreement. You mentioned that you're the only nation here represented the EU with Fine Food. So the FTA is an important one and touches on some of those emerging sectors and agri-sectors and so forth.
The FTA is going to be a very big achievement for all European countries. We've been working, supporting actually the work and the negotiating efforts of the EU delegation, who is here in Canberra actually. And Italy has been supporting these efforts. And this free trade agreement will open up a lot of opportunities in all different sectors. But probably we should focus on the opportunities, as we are here at Fine Food, for the food sector, because as you know, Europe, the food sector is very important for all European countries, especially for Italy in this case, because we are one of the countries with the highest number of geographical indications protected, by the EU. So I would like to briefly talk about this issue, because this issue is extremely sensitive for us, for Italy and for other European countries, and therefore is one of the main subjects of the negotiations that is conducted by the EU delegation. So basically we have three schemes in Europe: PDO, which is protected designation of origin. Then we have PGI, protected geographical indication, and the traditional specialties guarantee, TSG. And these three schemes are all based on a legal framework that is the EU regulation 1151 of 2012. So what's the purpose of this regulation, these three schemes? In few words, is really pretty much to ensure that only products genuinely originating from a specific region within each European country can be identified as such in the market. This is very important for us because, see, in Australia, there's a different perception because GIs, you have geographical indications, but they are considered as intellectual property rights and so private rights. And it's the responsibility to the holder to enforce them against any infringers. So they merely correspond also, furthermore, they merely correspond to the territory of origin. They don't cover a wider significance. So what's the wider significance that we assign in Europe is really the link. So why the origin of food matters, you could ask me, for Europeans, It's because it specifies the link to a land and the link also with an exclusive processing. And the purpose is to safeguard the authenticity, meaning heritage, tradition, know-how, the quality standards, because the EU applies strictly standards and quality controls to production. The safety, because EU farmers are really subject to stringent standards, and also the sustainability, because the EU food is highly traceable. So for us, it's something deeply rooted in our heritage, tradition, and protecting local, regional drinks also and foods equals to safeguard our legacy, and ultimately to promote rural and agricultural activity, and in general the economy of a territory, supporting also the social cohesion. So there's a wide importance, and what we are trying also to communicate is, I'm going to repeat myself, correct communication, because sometimes we see not only in Australia, also in other markets, this Italian sounding. So, we are very thankful to all the Italians that came to Australia a long time ago and created an awareness towards Italian products. This is very important. We cherish that. So we have nothing against this, Italians who really helped us promoting Italian products to Australia. What we fight is the misleading communication. We want the consumer to know what's made in Italy, what it's locally produced, but it's also of very good quality. We are not saying that made in Italy is a higher, not necessarily is a higher, it's a different.
But it's authentic from that regional.
What's important is to correctly communicate the consumer all this, and we know that Australia to that extent also protects the correct communication to our consumer. So, it's a very delicate subject that, has many different, topics that we don't have the time to go through everything. But Italy has 20 regions, and within the regions we have many different geographic indications. So for us is extremely important to be able to protect.
Of course,
our
and
heritage.
I think, as you say, that historical cultural element for the people who actually, grew up and passed on those styles,
Yes,
traditions,
yes.
and even the types of soils and inputs and so forth
Yes.
that are only available in that particular region.
Exactly.
It's very
so
unique.
maybe a
Yeah.
cheese, you have great cheese, for example, in Australia.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of saying this is made in Australia, this is made in Italy, it has a different taste, has a different texture.
Yeah.
We want to protect,
Yeah.
the denomination
Yeah.
of our product. That's all.
Yeah, so
It's
you can
just-
recognise and appreciate, as you say, the different styles and influences,
Yes.
but the province
Yes,
itself.
I can give you an example. We implement many promotional campaigns to raise awareness, and for example, we've been implementing a campaign for prosciutto di Parma and one for the Italian cheese. Cheeses, 8 categories. So, for
Yeah.
example, prosciutto di Parma. All these campaigns includes communication, but also participations to trade events with chefs and bloggers that collaborate with us. So we were at the Good Food and Wine Show, which is another
Yeah.
show here in Australia, more targeted towards consumers,
Yeah.
whether fine food is towards
B2B,
trade.
yeah.
So I was surprised of how many Australians came to us and they were, sampling prosciutto di Parma, and they would say, "Oh, but this is so different. It's sweeter than, for example, the Spanish prosciutto or the Australian prosciutto." And some of them were saying, "Well, I like, the Australian prosciutto because of such and such."
Yeah.
And some other would say, "Oh, but this melts in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's so sweet. The texture is so different." So it's just a matter of correctly informing the consumer so he knows
Yeah.
what is consuming
And those nuances
and
that-
purchases.
Yeah.
And I may add that the producers in Italy to export their products here, that they pay duties.
That's right. Yeah.
So the consumer, when they purchase a product that is made in Italy or made in France, they pay a premium price, of course, because it includes all the duties and everything. So it's
That's right.
important for the consumer to understand.
Yeah, no, I
That's all.
definitely agree with that. I think so many companies have invested a lot of time in really creating a global market,
Yeah.
global presence. So, and it also is a protection mechanism, as you said earlier, because if someone has a similar product or regional sort of connotation, if that product for any reason or that company for itself, becomes less of a quality or any other problems with that, it reflects badly on a region, which may have nothing to do with it.
Yes, exactly.
So that's important to
Exactly.
protect that
Yes,
integrity
yes,
as well, because
yeah.
of those standards and regulations that you have in place.
Yeah,
they're
they're very
back in those-
strict.
yeah.
So
No, I can definitely appreciate it. And I think all the viewers and all the people who are in business will appreciate that as well. So it's just a matter of, as you say, making sure the communication is simple and easy to understand for the
right.
consumers.
Yes.
Well, you're making me hungry now. But I think
I know.
with all
Now we
the-
deserve a visit to find food.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, before we do that, I just want
Yes.
to wrap up and ask you, you've been here for 4 years, and unfortunately, half of that's
Yes.
probably been locked up, with COVID. But, you've met with so many Australian companies over the journey. What's your tips and advice? How should they prepare to do business with Italy?
Well, the support, in some cases, we have Italian companies who are so advanced, in their presence in the world. We have companies like Leonardo. Leonardo is here with a base in Melbourne, actually, and they are so deeply rooted in your, defense industry. They are all over the place in Australia. So with this company, it's probably easier to interact directly because, they have a wider experience. We have companies here like WeBuild or Gela who are in infrastructure. You must know that a lot of infrastructure that you've been building throughout Australia, these companies were involved. Some other company on the other end, and probably the food industry is a good example, are smaller company. The companies, they don't have a lot of experience probably outside of Europe. And so in this case, I think that it's important to count on institutions, because we can be a very good support for Australian companies to interact with Italian companies and vice versa. So of course we cannot do much for Leonardo or WeBuild because they are big companies and we are in touch with them and they relate on us anyway as institutions. But with this small company, I strongly suggest to interact with us and to give us the opportunity as a governmental agency, to ease communication.
And the great thing with those bigger companies is that they act like a spearhead. They open up the markets
Yes,
for other
it's so
people in their supply
important.
chains.
It's so important.
Yeah.
In Adelaide, in October, we'll be there for the Space Forum, and Leonardo is
Yeah.
going to be with us.
Yeah.
And it's so important because, you see Leonardo, oh, I know Leonardo,
Yeah.
oh, so Italy's
Yeah.
in the space industry. For us, it's very important for the other companies because they open up
That's right.
the way.
Yeah, the forge the way.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you in person, and thank you for being on the Trade Australia show with
Thank you for
me.
this opportunity.
My pleasure, and
Thanks.
look forward to it. We'll go in and have a look at some of
Yes.
the Italian food producers
With
ourselves.
pleasure.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Paula.
Thank you very much.
So-
Thank you.